Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to an impromptu. Hope you can hear me. An impromptu-ish. I let you know this morning that I was going to jump on here live at 2:15 Eastern Standard Time. So, my friends, here I am. I'm going to wait till a couple of you start to come in live. Let me know that you're here. Give me a little wave, a little heart. Let me know that you're coming online. If you're watching this later on the replay, just know that these lives and the information that I'm bringing through is equally as relevant if you're not watching it live now. So I'm glad I caught you. Welcome. It is October 12th, I believe, yes, in 2023. And I got the call today to jump on and to talk about some pretty important topics. I've also made the commitment since beginning my Reboot with Alicia program, which started 2 weeks ago. I jumped on here live a couple of times prior to that start and started to talk about some things here on Instagram, and this will be actually replayed also on YouTube. So I'm going to start to show up, you guys, and start to talk about. Thank you so much. Oh, she says, I love the sweater. You're looking so beautiful. Thank you. So I'm going to start to talk about some things that we're moving through right now, that I'm moving through, that I know that a lot of some of my other clients as well are moving through. So I'm just going to kind of give you a couple minutes to come on. But as I said in the threads and in the chat post today, I'm going to talk about good. So some of you are starting to come online. Nice to see you all. Definitely be thinking about any questions that you'd like me to tune into. I'm more than happy to do that in this space. So I got the call this morning to talk to you about timelines. Okay, so in general, I'm just going to sort of frame all of this up. Okay, as you know, you if you're here, if you're following me here on the Awaken Inspired Alicia Instagram app, or on my Facebook community, you know that I am all about and I talk all about awakening. And some may call that ascension or transformation. And if you know my story, you know I started my journey only 5 years ago into expanding my intuition, my consciousness, of course, and Beth says you're reading my mind, was thinking of timelines and me today. So here we go. There is no accident that I'm showing up here. So, yes, today we are going to be talking about timelines for a very specific reason. I'm making a commitment to you here now to show up and authentically share with you some of the things that we are all going through as a collective group of us, of humanity, and some of the things that I'm still moving through as part of what I would call ascension or human transformation, as it relates also to what we're experiencing in the world. So that's what I'm about. And so I'm going to start to show up here on the Instagram chat and with some things that are coming up energetically, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically as it relates to this time in the world and things that we're moving through. So, my friends, this is why today's topic is about timelines and timeline shifting. So, I wanted to talk about this concept again from a perspective of I, um, I was not spiritually aware up until 5 years ago. I have learned so much over the last few years, and in the last 2.5 years of actually working one on one with people now, um, in helping them with awakening, with an expansion of their consciousness, with transitioning or transmuting things out of their life to become sort of an expanded version of them. So, with this work, I am very privy to the stories of so many of you who are moving through times of transformation in your life, but many of you are moving through what could be described as ascension or awakening. So today's topic is near and dear because it seems to be happening quite a lot lately. And so, whenever that happens for me or for the people that I work with in my groups and my one on one sessions, I know that is something that it might be happening to many, many others. So, I wanted to talk today about what a timeline shift is, or a timeline jump, some would call it. I'm describing it in one way, but perhaps as we expand a little bit more on this topic, you can chime in sort of and ask as well, or share examples of something that you have experienced that may be related to timeline shifting or timeline jumps or shifts in our collective timeline. So, from what I've been experiencing, we have been going through as part of our planetary ascension. We have been definitely moving through some timeline leaps or timeline shifts that have actually impacted all of us. So, let me start this chat by describing in my own words what a timeline means, or a shift of a timeline means. So, the way that I can describe it is we are all individually moving towards sort of a trajectory, okay, of, depending upon each of us. So let's go individual first. We're all moving towards things in our life. We make choices every day, every moment. We also have free will. And we are sort of moving in the direction always of a particular direction. Okay. So that's considered a timeline. So one particular timeline. What also happens is that things come up either by choice. So we might make a decision, let's say, to go this way instead of this way. We may make a decision to, I'll go examples. We could make a decision to cancel all of our workday and just stay home instead, and rest or do things at home. So that shift in timeline can impact many things, right? It can impact in our own lives. It can either help us because maybe we need a day of rest. It can hinder us because maybe when we go back to work, there's that much more to do. All of those meetings that you would have had that day, all of those things that you would have happened have been shifted. So, in general, though, we're all sort of moving in sort of a timeline or a direction that is most likely to happen. Okay, and this is happens with our our just our human nature, right? We follow a time, so we typically are working from 9 to 5 ish, or in other sort of schedules depending on what you do for a living. We typically get up at a certain time a day. We typically eat 3 meals a day. So these are all things, as well as the clock and expectations on us and events we want to attend, and things that we want to do in our lives all seem to sort of have a timeline. In addition, we are also, let's say, subscribing. I was just working on Google Calendar. So let's use Google Calendar as an example. We are also subscribing or checking off the box to other people's timelines. Okay, so, oh, love this example. Thank you, guys. Just working on Google Calendar, and now I have this complete metaphorical example to explain timelines. So you're also subscribing to a work timeline, for example. So you need to be there at a certain times, the times that the stores are open. Click, click. The times that you might be doing sort of your own sort of homework, or getting together with girlfriends or family. That's all happening. We just had Thanksgiving here in Canada. So you're subscribing to all these other timelines, okay? And in this example, we're going to use Google Calendars, okay? So I have my Google Calendar. I have my calendar where my personal sort of, I get up, I may go to the gym, I come back, I do my sessions, I do my planning. So I have my calendar, and then I have my children's calendars sort of in my awareness, and then I have my friends' calendars in my awareness. So if you think about a timeline like a great big Google Calendar, and that we're subscribing to other calendars, okay? So what happens when we shift from what we've said we've is the most optimal or obvious sort of direction we're going, our most likely timeline, which usually has it that I'm going to get up and I'm going to have breakfast and I'm going to do this. And then around 5, I'm going to have dinner. And then I'm probably going to go to bed at 10. Okay. That's a likely, okay, really going to bed later, but you get the point. Now, so I can make a choice because I have free will to veer off my timeline, and often do. We all do. So there's an impact there, okay, energetically or even physically, or even an impact to other people in your lives, right? In addition, let's say all of these other added calendars that I'm subscribing to all have one particular event that happens to everybody who I'm subscribing to that calendar. We could use like the big event that happened in 2020 that I shall not name, as a sort of collective or broader group of subscribed calendars that might be impacted, okay, by one particular event. Okay, so I can even narrow it down to like a couple of day window in March of 2020 when sort of all of everybody's calendar was impacted. Okay, so you get what I'm throwing down here? Give me some high fives if this is making sense. So what happens is then the overall, so let's switch over to what I'll call the collective calendar. Okay, so this is the collective timeline as opposed to just my timeline. So in that situation, my timeline was affected, my children's timeline was affected, all of my friends, all of my family, and so it went, right? So the larger collective timeline was also affected, which had a really big residual impact or effect, not just physically on how we were living our lives. That got shut down right away, right? We were literally like at home, everything that we did stopped, right? So this is actually a really great metaphorical example of how timelines work, okay? So the impact was so big on this very physical in our own reality timeline that happened that many things shifted and have since shifted. Okay. So we can also look at that time period and say, hey, before March 2020 and after March 2020, we've gone through so many things that very big collective timeline shift has impacted and has continued to impact. Our financial system, the media. I mean, there's just so many things in our own personal lives and as well as in our collective reality. Okay, so let's fast forward till now. Okay, we are, since that time, and a little bit before that, are moving through very much what I would describe as an ascension process. Okay, so during the ascension process, what happens is we're moving out of a reality that we understood before and existed, and in this space, I'll describe it as a third dimensional or density world. Okay, and we were living in that for a very, very, very long time. There are certain things that have happened in our physical reality that have shifted it, but there's also things that are happening in our energetic and spiritual or conscious reality that are shifting. Okay, so what we're actually moving into now is a time where there is energetic. We're feeling these timeline shifts more energetically or spiritually than we are in our physical realities. That makes sense. Okay. So, what I have been experiencing in the last probably 2 to 3 weeks, but it's probably been since the summer, but it seems to have sped up a little bit, is things that are happening, maybe not on the surface or in my physical world, that show me, hey, something as big as what happened in March 2020 has impacted things, on all levels, emotionally, physically, spiritually, energetically. That was an example of a very big timeline leap, jump, shift, okay, for all of us, right? However, There are also on the physical level micro timeline leaps and jumps happening all the time. Okay, so things that happen in the world, things that happen in our that we can see in our media, for if we are watching the news. Some of us don't. Some of us are. I still follow trends, but I really try not to allow myself to subscribe to that to the story of that timeline, because I find it impacts my energy. Not that I don't pay attention to the things that are going on in the world, but I am very much careful about what I allow into my own sort of resonance that might impact my energy, which is actually what we're talking about today. Okay. So certain things that are happening in our world, the events in Lahaina, there's conflict right now happening, in Israel. There's just so many things. And it seems, I'm sure you would all agree, although some would argue that these things have been going on, and they have for thousands of years in humanity, wars and such. We are now, though, more tuned in, even on the physical, with what is happening in our world, energetically, spiritually, even physically, because of the internet. We have almost real time access to what's happening in the world. Okay, so even just that, you are then subscribing to that calendar and then picking up off of the emotions or the energetic shifts. You may not even be aware, okay, that you are actually energetically being impacted just by even subscribing to a set of calendars, okay, or timelines that are affecting you, moving your energy up and back, right? So it's one thing to actually be experiencing these things and and another thing to be an empathic human that is saying, this is happening in the world and it shouldn't. Okay, so that's one level. The other thing that is actually happening in the world. So let me reframe this and explain it one more time. The fact that we have access to the internet now, and that you're all here with me live right now in this now moment, at 2:36 Eastern Standard Time on, the 12th of October. Whether you're here with me right in this moment, you're still subscribing to my timeline because you're here with me right now. So anything that I might say to you or energetically maybe sharing with you may impact you. Okay. So these are all the things that may actually impact our personal timelines. Okay. So you can see now how much subscribing to, okay, or allowing in all of the noise of all of these different timelines may actually be impacting you. Okay. And that's just the obvious. So the next level on that is that we are energetic beings. Everything is energy. So whether or not we're consciously aware of what's going on, we are picking up off energetically off a resonance, okay? And energetically, we are picking up off of a collective consciousness. So it's sort of like imagine it like a sort of here, here's the conscious, the overall humanity consciousness level right here. Okay, so we've got our own energetic body, we've got our physical body here, we've got a spiritual body here, we have an aura. Let's say way up here, there's another level where we're unconsciously picking up off of energy that we're not even actually participating in. So I'm not subscribed to that calendar. Okay, let's say it's the media, but I am still picking up the resonance energetically, okay, off of that particular timeline, the collective timeline. So that's happening whether we're aware of it or not. Okay, so if you're following me here, just let me know. So the next level to that is that we are, and these are big topics, and I hope I'm I'm making these topics a little bit more bite-sized for you. But what is happening right now as we are shifting, okay, so I liken to this to the fact that to sort of evolve, right, in our human experience, certain things are not a resonance anymore. So certain systems, even just that description of subscribing to media, okay, that is one choice I've made not to subscribe. Or another choice maybe I choose not to be with that type of person or I choose to shift my job because I'm not resonating with that anymore. Okay. So we're all kind of moving through these changes. So you can see how we as a collective are moving through an ascension or a rise up. Okay. So what's happening is there's been an increased number, probably due to the fact that we're all shifting and changing, as well as our collective reality is shifting and changing and moving. It actually can cause what's called a timeline jump or a timeline leap. Okay, that may happen just because of the very nature of how our world has changed or is changing so much, as opposed to, say, let's give an example of maybe 10 years ago. I'm sure this resonates with many of you, but I find that 10 years ago, I feel like nothing would really happen for a while. You know, you go to work, you come home, you go with your friends, you raise, you send your kids to school, you go to school, wherever it is you're in your life. And it didn't feel like there were that many blips, right? As in comparison to, say, what we've experienced over the last, 3.5, 4 years, um, as a collective. Okay. So we can all, I think, agree, yes, that we are all moving through some sort of shifting. Okay. So what that actually leads to is what this concept of timeline jumping or timeline leaps are. Okay. So what I'm here to tell you is that you can actually experience physiological, nervous system responses to a shift in a timeline. Okay. First of all, it's obvious if you shift your timeline or if a shift in your timeline happens. I'm going to use an unfortunate example from a friend of mine this morning who actually had a break in her home. She was not there at the time. She had a break in. So she's kind of moving along every day. She came in this morning and found the break in. She was not there. And that totally shifted everything, shifted her energetically, emotionally. Everything was sort of off. Okay. And the fear kind of came in, and, there's just a lot of emotions that go with this. Okay. So that is an example of something happening not for you, as far as shifting of a timeline. But you can see using that example how energetically, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically, how a quick shift off of the, sort of the regular direction that you were going, she probably would have just dropped off what she had to drop off, gone to the gym, carried on with her day. Nothing would have been any different. Okay. So imagine that same scenario. She's okay, by the way, if anyone's wondering, and nothing was really stolen. I should probably say that. However, it was still very shocking to the system, and forgive me for using that example, but I think it kind of shows you where I'm going. So imagine that something's not actually happening on the physical plane that you could see, okay? But that something is happening energetically, or that something is happening on behalf of the whole, the collective. All right. So something maybe that is happening globally that you're not even aware of yet. So, if I can use my example of 2020, late March 2020, it kind of began in the early March. That sort of, you kind of you might have felt something brewing before the whole thing was actually out in the open and being discussed in our media. Okay? And then we were bombarded with it, right? But as an example, these sorts of events are happening, or our connection or your connection, energetically to the collective timeline, okay, will impact you, okay? Whether you're aware of it or not. So I always say knowledge is power. So I'm coming on here today to talk about this so that, first of all, to help some of you who may be actually experiencing a timeline leap, or sorry, jump or leap. Like, I actually can sometimes be very affected or feel it. I have had some examples even where I didn't know how to explain it as a timeline jump or a timeline leap, but where literally I have felt in my reality that time slowed down or stopped. Okay. So that's one sort of symptom, I guess. So I'm going to give you some symptoms and signs. that you may be experiencing a an effect of a timeline a jump or a leap. So, with the intention of giving you the tools that you need to sort of not panic, number one, and maybe understand some of the symptoms that you may be having as of late. Because I always say this ascension or awakening process, there really is no hall pass. The earth is moving through shift and change, and so are we. And the more tools that we have and the information that we have in our toolbox to help us, the better. Okay. So, certain signs or symptoms that you may have been experiencing or are experiencing an impact of either a collective timeline jump or change or shift, or even if you're experiencing your own adjustment time or adjustment symptom to a timeline jump or leap. Now, a timeline jump or leap is not necessarily bad. A lot of the examples I'm using today are bad. A timeline jump or leap typically can be something we want if we are in a time of growth, right? So, so a timeline. Let me give you an example of a timeline jump or a leap that is a positive one. Okay, and ideally they're all positive to some degree, as long as we understand sort of what is happening with us, so we don't panic. And number two, that we are able to heal the wounds um, that we may have had in the past that bring us into a looping cycle of being afraid. Okay, so the intention is to unpack these concepts so they're not so strange or woo woo or scary. Okay, so let's give you an example of a positive timeline leap or jump. Um, this has to do also with sort of putting in intentions and work into manifesting something in your life, right? So let's say you're looking to change your career, and you're moving. You've got all these sort of pieces coming together. You're doing the work. You're not resisting the change, and you're moving towards a change in your job. Okay, let's use this as an example. So a positive timeline jump or leap would look like an opportunity opening up, and it all happening kind of really quickly, and without much effort on your end. And all of a sudden, all the pieces are in place, and within, in this case, it probably, if we're talking career, probably be days or weeks. But it could be as simple as running in. Here's an example of a positive timeline leap. Maybe you ran into an old colleague who just happened to have an opportunity for you, and there's a conversation, and all of a sudden, everything shifted, right? You're feeling positive because you've been putting your intention, your awareness, your work into moving forward with a changing career. All of a sudden, you've run into a colleague. They've presented that opportunity to you. You're energetically, you're shifting, emotionally, you're shifting, and everything's sort of positively moving in that trajectory. Okay, so that would be an example, sort of 3D physical example of time jump or transition. Okay, so energetically, though, okay, we are experiencing, some of us are able to perceive or experience timeline jumps or leaps in the collective that are not visibly apparent in the physical reality. Okay, so if that's you, that could mean extreme fatigue. I often get that. I can kind of typically tune in if I'm feeling very overwhelmingly fatigued and I'm not getting some sort of energetic attack. I typically don't get any illness any longer after doing this work. Um, I mean, I really don't get long-term illnesses or even colds or flus anymore, because I am able to sort of check in with my bodies and my fields and clear whatever it is that wants to come up, and or rest when my body's telling me to. Okay, so if there's no other reason why I might be tired, I can usually trace it back to some sort of shift in timeline that may not be my own. I may be picking up off energy from others as it relates to what's going on in the world. So what I really want you to understand is that we humans are incredibly powerful and incredibly telepathic, whether we think we are or we're not. And sometimes we are actually picking up off of what's happening in the collective, even if it's not in our conscious awareness. So I'm going to give you some other indications that you may be at least even be experiencing timeline shifting or consciously maybe perceiving it. Sometimes time seems to slow down um, for people. So you swore you looked at the clock and it was one time, and then you look back and you're like, how could only, how could an hour and a half have gone by, or how could, only 10 minutes have gone by? So that's another indication that you might be perceiving shifts in timelines. Okay. And again, all of this is to say that you're not crazy. Okay. But these are some of the symptoms. A lot of spiritual teachers, including myself, talk about ascension symptoms. And so these are a lot of symptoms that you might be actually just perceiving with more than just your five senses, a shift, okay, a timeline shift. Um, some others, I've actually had an experience. I was speaking to another friend of mine today who also had an experience similar to mine, where I actually experienced a very loud noise. This happened a couple of times to me. A very loud noise, and then it looked like literally the reality just sort of stopped, and something like moves in slow motion. Now that's slowing it down enough. Sometimes these blips happen so quickly that you might not even be it might really sort of confuse you or even make you dizzy. So dizziness is another sort of possible indication. And I'm not suggesting that you don't always check in to see if there's something physically going on with you. Okay, so that is something that I'm always teaching people to. But there are other reasons for some of the symptoms that we're going through. So slowing down of time, extreme fatigue. Another really big one, and this is kind of a higher level topic, but I wanted to throw it in here because it's been impacting me as well as my clients. So sometimes when we think, you can see that you're in a timeline leap or jump or leap. If something is coming up in your life that feels like it's something old, okay, something you've already dealt with, okay, and it seems to kind of come in like out of nowhere. So perhaps it's a relationship pattern that you feel like you fixed or you solved or you forgave, and all of a sudden it's kind of back in your awareness, and there doesn't seem to be any logical reason for it. Um, Another indication would be a fear, okay, that perhaps maybe again you have healed in yourself or cleared, and and it hasn't really impacted you. Let's say fear of not having money. Okay, let's use that as an example. Let's say you really have a handle of that. You've done some healing around that. You're not really, it's not really in your awareness. Maybe it's not even logical when you look at your bank account, and yet all of a sudden you're feeling that fear of scarcity, or fear of not having enough money, or feeling that you're not doing enough to plan for your future. Okay, so those are also examples. If that's coming up out of nowhere, or it's something that you have thought you healed, okay, likely that could be due to the fact that you either individually have gone through a timeline shifting, and or you've participated in a bigger collective timeline shifting. And so I wanted to explain how it happens. Basically, some of these old wounding gets sort of thrown back into the soup, if you will. Okay, so this is what I've been experiencing, and what I wanted to share with you today. That these are some of the indications that you may be experiencing, either consciously, unconsciously, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, shifting timelines. Okay, so it doesn't have to be scary. What I always say is, why is this coming up for me? Okay, so at the end of the day, what we really want to do is we want to always know that we are fully supported, that here anyway, you're here live with me on the Awaken Inspired Alicia Instagram right now. There is a very large community. A lot of you have popped in now. I'm just giving you all some waves to let you know I see you. Um, and I love you very much. But there are so many of us that are going through um, this time. We're all moving through this time in the world. It's like I always say, we don't get a hall pass to this. So, what I always say is knowledge is power. And all we need to do is sort of unpack some of these really big concepts together, right? And it really helps that we're not going through it alone. So, so does anybody, if anybody wants to jump on and ask a question around something that has happened, I can, if I have a few minutes left here. Big concepts, big topics today. But you know, it is my commitment to you now to start to show up fully in the world I'm living in. Sure, I can. I'm gonna bring Catherine in here. So yeah, here we go. Okay, here we go. Catherine, are you gonna come in? Actually, if I can share, Catherine, I did actually. I don't know if you were on, but I shared your story from this morning. Yeah, yeah. So so just to give a little context, and if you're coming here on the replay, I shared the story of what you found in your home this morning, and basically, the objective was in this discussion was to talk about how either whether it's your own personal timeline or something that's happening in the collective, how a shift in a timeline can really impact you. So yeah. So it was Catherine that had that unfortunate experience. So I'm really hoping everything is okay now with you.
Yeah, so, of course, I called you, right? You're for support. Thank you for that. So I did meditation and then I got grounded and I'm like, no, I'm not going to let this derail me. I'm going to allow this to help me rise and I'm going to use this energy to kind of propel me forward, right, or upwards, and use this in order to see, wait a minute, if this is happening in my reality, where is it in my body?
Love it.
So, yeah, so I did that. And then I pinpointed it and I'm like, no, I'm not serving, I'm not like your slave. You're actually going to help me.
Yes.
Right. So I turned it around because right now it's like the dark is kind of, we've been slaves to it. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, times are shifting.
Yes.
So I shifted that energy.
Yes.
And now it's helping me rise.
I can already tell right now. I spoke to you around 12:30, right before. Your energy is already totally shifted. And if you think about it, too, I mean, it was really scary. I mean, they broke into her home through a window. They went. You know, there's a lot of emotions that's come along with that. There's a lot of, but wow, I'm extremely impressed and proud that you're already shifting in like in how you're approaching it. And so it's a perfect example. Thank you, Catherine, for doing the work and showing up and sharing with us. But how we have the ability. So first of all, knowledge is power. So the first thing I said to you when you called me to just sort of, and you looked scared. You look, and of course I would be too. But the first thing that we can do is to say, no, I'm not going to allow this event or whatever's happened, you know, in my world to derail me and to take me that way instead of keeping me on track or right. So we do have a choice to do that, and I'm not saying it's easy, especially like if you have an event like what you just went through. I mean, that is terrifying, right? And there's many things. But if we can decide to stand in our power instead and say, okay, I'm not going to be impacted this way. We live in a world. You had the police there right away. You can get an alarm system. You weren't there when it happened, right?
Right.
So, and I love that you said that you meditated on it and figured out sort of why this was happening and what is this showing you. And maybe it's just as simple as making sure you're looking out behind you and get that alarm system. And maybe energetically that means, a little bit more thought to protection,
But I think that it shifted because we've been afraid, right? We've all had our fears about, this happening but now everything is shifting and it's reverting, or it was inverted and now it's coming back to the right way.
Yeah.
So sure, these energies, like we live in a polarity, a world of polarity, right? Where there is kind of a reason for the dark and the light, but it's living in that balance and mastering them both, and walking in the middle and using both of them. So yeah, that was a real point of awareness for me.
It was.
And it shifted. Something definitely shifted.
Yeah. So a beautiful example. I'm sorry it happened to you, but I'm really, really, I'm great. At the same time, I'm grateful because this is an important conversation to have. The topics that we've, that this is opening up, and you know what, we all have the choice whether or not, and I explained it before you got on here, using the Google Calendar example, we all have the choice to subscribe to these other calendars, right? Or we can pause them, jump into that calendar when we need to see what's going on, but then manage our own calendars. Because when our own calendar is managed and our own timeline's managed, you're then able, like you did today, Catherine, you do the work, right? So you were able to show up, and re-look at the situation, not let it send you down the rabbit hole energetically, emotionally. I can already see the shift,
But I also want to say that once you see something, the natural law of the universe is that the higher frequency dictates the reality. So I'm a higher frequency than the dark. So I get to kind of not tell the dark what to do, but tell the dark what to do, like get out of here, right?
Yeah.
So that's my natural way. Like the higher frequency dictates your reality. So it's an important thing to remember, and that automatically takes your power back.
Absolutely. So the other topic you might want to weigh in on, I've got about 2 more minutes left. The other topic you might want to weigh in on is there any other symptoms that you have experienced? Because I know Catherine is also one of the people I work with that does experience timeline leaps and jumps, even when it's not something that's being experienced in her reality. Is there anything else you want to add to that discussion? Any other symptoms that you've noticed, or when you kind of know that something is shifted?
So I noticed when 2 days ago when I woke up and suddenly there was the time dilation, right? So time dilation, when suddenly you get to do all this stuff and it's like only 45 minutes have gone by, when you feel like, whoa, how did I get all that done? So that's the sign.
Yeah.
And another thing that happened to me is that I went outside at rush hour. There was no traffic. I'm like,
what is happening?
Where am I? There's no traffic. So that comes up, and just these subtle nuances. That's why it's really important to get to know yourself and get to know your reality, so you can kind of pick up those subtle nuances and things that normally you would be on autopilot. So when you're on autopilot, you don't pick up these things, right?
Exactly.
But when you're really tuned in the present moment, you notice these small shifts. And there's definitely been an extreme amount of fatigue where the body feels like it weighs like 10,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And
or in addition to that, I would say like almost emotional overwhelm, like kind of like soul fatigue. Like I couldn't go out and do that thing if I wanted to right now, right? But it's not coming back to like being sick, or it's just all like it's just extreme soul fatigue, or extreme fatigue or overwhelm at like I can't do anything but just be here, And so I also just want to sort of wrap this up by saying, that the purpose of these conversations are to let you know that you're not alone. Okay.
Correct.
If you are experiencing these things, it's you're not crazy. Okay. And there is a community of us here that are all moving through this together. So, if you are coming onto this chat on the replay, please share any of your confirmations or experiences or any other information. But and I'm sure you would agree with me, Catherine. I mean, we have been moving through some really crazy spiritually, energetically, some crazy times, let alone what we're experiencing, just by, turning on social media,
Exactly.
right?
And I just want to add one more thing to that is that when whatever you're going through, it's like you have to remember that it's only that day or
Yes.
that hour. It's not going to be forever. Your life isn't going to be like, a certain way forever. Everything always changes and shifts, and you integrate everything that you're going through. So the more you can give yourself some grace and love, and know that it's just gonna pass, then I think that's a really important point to remember.
Totally. Well, this was obviously meant to happen. Thank you. And you look great already. So
I
hope.
just showered after all of that, so I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay.
She looked like so scared, and I don't blame. It was like kind of, but what a beautiful turnaround, and what a great way to be able to give back to anyone who might be joining us here today. So thank you so much, Catherine, as usual.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap up this talk. So if you are joining, I'm going to actually also place this conversation on my YouTube channel. So if you have any specific questions related to this topic or any other, please DM me. Let me know that you're here. There are others of us. We are all here. We're all doing this together. And I will be back on here live very, very soon. So bye for now, everybody.